Hi, welcome. This is Phyllis. I'm just waiting a few more minutes for the rest of the guests to arrive, and we will start. And I'm not going to take up too much of your time. This is just a brief chat. I didn't have a another um, way of contacting and reaching out, so I sent out some blasts this morning. So it's about we'll wait another 5 or 10 minutes and for folks to arrive and check in, and then we'll start with the presentation. But again, this is a celebration of our History Month, Black History Month. Everyone's history matters, but this is a particular moment to celebrate what I'm experiencing every day of my life, which has been a few years, but it was started by Carter Woodson. We had a great meeting this morning with another group of community service college educated women. So I invited folks, and I'm glad that we can do this. It's recorded and it will be available later, posted on my website. So just go to phyllisthesecondwind.com, which is my 501c3 for education and community. And again, when I started my doctoral studies, just for a brief chat, in 2012, I made a pledge and promise that I waited this long to do this work and I want to put it to work immediately. So I began my publishing. I began reaching out. I continued teaching at 3 universities at one point at the same time. Then I had to cut back on that so I could do more writing. So I want to thank my hosts, including the Getty Research Center, the City of Hope, UCLA, many libraries. They have over 20 libraries, all the conferences and everything that allowed me to get to this point. And the journey continues because I'm at the point where I've published and I'm involved now in my nonprofit as well as sharing the research and results that I found. So I'm going to step away for a minute, grab a few of my resources, and we'll start in about a minute. It's 4 minutes after. We'll wait perhaps another 6 minutes, and in the meantime, just enjoy your lag time. And I'm not sure if you can pick up this music, but I'll be back in a minute. I'm going to grab a few more of my material. Okay, I'm back. I'm in waiting room a minute. And hopefully it won't take more than about a half hour or 40 minutes because everyone has a very busy schedule. And I have someone on the line who wants to get in. So let me go ahead and give him that access. One moment. Give everyone a few more minutes. Let's see. We have someone who's trying to get in, so let me help them out. Hold on, bear with me. Okay, they're slowly coming in, so let's see what I can do to help speed up the process. We still have a couple more minutes. But there's a lot going on. There's a lot of exciting stuff going on, so I want to just send out a few more invitation links to make sure that folks get the word. So bear with me. So I know it's been a busy month. Everyone's doing things virtually, and I see a lot of folks out. I know Rams won the Super Bowl, and that was a huge activity. So let me send out this message, and then we'll jump right into the presentation. One moment. This technology is always interesting. So we're down at the 10-minute mark, and we'll give it a few more seconds. I want to send in this link so our guests can gain access again. Just then we'll start and keep rolling. So you can see in the background I have my logo. I spent a lot of time on my website, and I want you to browse it. We're getting a virtual tour together, but I keep coming up with more information. But we're getting there. It's a big job, but there's a lot of information. We had quite a few events, so I want to make sure this gentleman gets the information so he can log in too. Okay, I don't see any folks in the waiting room, and we'll just get rolling with this now. So this is sort of an informal chat, just to again share our celebration of culture, awareness. A lot of us in all various communities need to be aware of things, and that's why we call it the grown folks woke, because Cicely Lewis, I always want to give credit where credit's due. She's a hardworking school librarian who deals mostly with high school, the youth. So she developed this very extensive and well recognized program to encourage reading that's relevant and reflects our current issues, current matters. And she gives somewhat of a guideline and recommendations on what we can do locally, as well as nationally, as well as internationally, to come up with our own local woke reading series, list of books, list of readings that are somewhat counter to what I found in the library when I did my research. I've looked at the library here in our local cities. I've looked at the libraries at several academic institutions, so-called Ivy League, including Swarthmore, Harvard, etc. And I found books such as Uncle Tom's Cabin, Adventures of Sambo, Charlie Chan at the Opera, and more. And Tarzan and Jane, I have to make sure we don't leave out the gender equity issues. Meet Tarzan, you Jane. That's a paraphrase of the title. So I think some of these library collections in our 100,000 libraries in the United States need upgrade and relevancy so as not to insult readers' intelligence, as well as reflect more of what our population is now. It's not all vanilla, as I always mention to my son. When we went to 31 flavors, we're not in a vanilla world. There's a lot of different choices, so it's good to be aware of that. So that's why Cecily, I applaud her. I did a little research because she said she was inspired by Essence magazine. So browse the website and you'll see that Essence had a series on woke reading as well, and I included the links on the website of several Hollywood folks who also explain and define what is woke reading. So let's move forward. Here's the agenda. Welcome, our history, our cultures, everything matters, and more, including our climate and environment, because my nonprofit named Second Wind is based on wind energy, solar energy, alternate fuel, because we have to do something or we're all in peril. There's only one earth, and what I want to do is make sure it's here while I'm here, as well as for our future. So why? This explains why we're doing this, some definitions, some real important stuff, because much of it was not studied in school. So first, let's look at the moving blocks. There's always some movement, there's always something going on, and I want to make sure we can share this information over your chat, coffee table, some things to think about so that it won't hit you like a wave at the beach or to a tsunami, as I once spoke with a gentleman at the beginning of this pandemic. It's like a tsunami, everything's being hit, and it seems like things have been slowly digging out. I hear announcements that the pandemic data is improving, but I'll wait and see, because one doctor actually made a pronouncement that he expected the variations of COVID-19 to last at least 8 years. So we'll see. I'm still in the wait and see mode, but vaccinations, boosters, and staying aware through the local resources, as well as the Center for Disease Control and WHO, are highly recommended. So why are we doing it? Again, it's for ourselves. You see my cursor? And then for our future. That's an image of the future. So what I want to share with you are some of these links. I did a quick search. I want to pull up this information. And then also, what are we talking about? Because I did another search and I found that basically this Black History celebration is not well known in some places, and it's sometimes a surprise. So let's pull up this one link and see what we can decipher from it quickly. I'm watching the clock, so I want to make sure where we wrap things up on a timely basis and keep things moving. So let's pull this one up just to make sure our themes and our information makes sense and we're sticking to the agenda. So this is our first of many, and we'll do this. If you want to make your business stand, let's launch it with Taylor Brands. Watch me make you look like a pro. Okay, we'll start with a logo. And I notice with all of us, there's some technology issues, but we'll deal with this. So why are we doing this? I want to play a quick musical prelude just to remind us that we have to be aware, show respect, and love. So this is a celebration. I want us to be able to sing along or move along, dance if you want to. I am moved by a documentary titled And Still I Rise, inspired by the legendary Dr. Maya Angelou's poem of the same name. They each speak to the indefatigable tenacity that fueled African American contributors to this country and the world. I stand here today, proud of my story, proud of my heritage. And okay, and I want to make sure that all the credit is due to given to people that I and the resources that I include in the presentation. So again, pause and get back to the agenda because we want to uplift all. They say all boats must rise, and that's the theme of the work I do. It's about including everyone. As I mentioned, we want to talk about why we're doing this. It's about history, culture, everything matters. So let's go back to all my right person. You'll see we're just on bullet point number 2. Why are we doing this? As I said, the cultural celebrations. But our things like this and our unity and identity for years. I know my family from the Gulf Coast, we celebrate Mardi Gras. We have food and other traditions that make things special. But as I mentioned, a lot of people don't even know what Black History Month is all about. So let me just show this because, as I mentioned on my website, I'm a former U.S. Foreign Service officer who worked for the Agency for International Development, which is part of the Department of State. So I went into the State Department every day. I still have international focus. So let's listen to this. What is Black History Month around the world? Because it's important and it matters. And we have to tell people, what is America to you?
How would you describe your country? The best way that I could describe America for someone who has never been is that it is a melting pot of many, many, many different cultures.
I would describe the UK as a country with lots of contrast. So
I'm going
you can go to a place
because
like
as
London,
a
where I
Foreign
live,
Service
which is
officer,
really,
when you're
really
planning your
diverse. You'll have
career,
like shops
one must be
from all
aware of
over
the
the
fact
world,
that your
and
child
people
is
from all over
not
the world speaking
in
different languages,
the country
and then you'll drive
of
out
origin,
like maybe
as
2-3
this individual
hours and
said.
then not see a black
They
person
will
at
be.
all.
They
If I
may
could
be
describe my
ignorant or
experience in
not
Japan
fully
in
aware
3
of what's
words,
going
it would
on
be
in
fun,
the country,
safe, and
the
peaceful to say
culture,
the least.
locally,
However, on
and
the
how
other
it
hand,
fits in
being
wherever
included
they
by
are. So
Japanese
let me
community
finish
and
this
being
quick
so
video.
ingrained into the tradition and culture has
TV's
made
in
me
Canada.
ignorant and oblivious to my own bloodline, ancestral history, and culture.
What is Black History Month?
I would describe Black History Month as a time for people to learn about the Black communities in the areas they live in, so the country, or even around the world. In Brazil, we mostly do small events. It could be
Jazz is in
some
Vietnam.
artistic events, some
Yes.
speeches.
I
We
can't see the
celebrate historical
You can't
Black
see the video?
figures who've had a
Okay, let me
huge
fix
impact in the world and also amongst Black people. When I first arrived here in Vietnam, people were not really familiar with Black History Month, so
Is that
I
better?
thought it was important for us to engage the
I
local
just see the
people
picture of
amongst the
the
Black
six
people
ladies.
here.
When do you
You can
celebrate
see the
Black
ladies,
History Month?
the video?
In
The
Australia,
PowerPoint.
Black History Month is
Okay,
actually based
that's coming
in
next.
July. I
We're
think that
watching the
people
video.
outside
Can you see
of
that now?
Australia probably
No.
don't know that there's a
No.
Black History Month
Okay.
here.
Well, we
And
gotta
I
fix
think
that.
that
Hold on.
that's not really a surprise. Black History Month here is centered, and quite rightly so, around the Indigenous population. Unfortunately, the relations between the government and Indigenous Australia is really not what it should be, even in the sense of prioritising and amplifying the voices of Indigenous Australians. I don't really feel like we're there yet.
Well, we're
In
recording,
America, we
so I'll be sure to
celebrate
send
Black
you the
History Month
recording,
during
and
the
I'll try
month
to
of
fix it.
February. It was originally
In the
only
meantime,
supposed to be a week
thank you.
long, and it was known as Negro History Week. But we decided to make it a month-long event because a week just wasn't enough. We celebrate the Black History Month in November. The date is 20th of November. In Brazil, like for Black people, we are not pretty sure from where we are from, where we came from. So it's a way to celebrate all of the greatness that we have inside us and outside as well. Just to give a depiction as to Japan's demographics, within Japan's population, only 2% of Japan's population are foreigners, and of that 2%, 80% of that 2% are foreigners from other Asian countries. Black History Month is not a nationally recognized thing. However, that does not stop us from taking our time to celebrate and remember our Black history within our community and outside our community. For Black History Month, Legacy Foundation Japan will be working with Monique Marianne, the heart behind organizing Black History Month events here in Japan for over 10 years.
When did you start learning about Black History Month?
I originally heard about Black History Month in elementary school, but our teachers did not really take advantage of Black History Month.
To be honest, like in Canada, there isn't much of a Black history curriculum in schools. We kind of go through like Martin Luther King, like a brief mention of Malcolm X, Nelson Mandela and the Underground Railroad because it came through Canada, but beyond that, it was kind of it.
A lot of the time when we learn about history, it's very, very whitewashed. And even when we do learn about Black history in school outside of Black History Month, there's not really that much of a focus.
If we learned about Black history, it wasn't, a lot. It was just like there was slavery and there was a little bit of the civil rights movement, but we didn't learn it as in depth as we learned white history.
What historical figures or events do you celebrate during Black History Month?
Notting Hill Carnival is a really important event that takes place at the end of August, but it actually started after there were race riots in West London. So in like the late 50s and early 60s, there was a huge influx of migration from the Caribbean after the war, and that obviously led to racial tensions. So the carnival was kind of like in response and like a celebration of West Indian culture in London.
There have been a number of first Blacks in Japan. Chris Hart, he's from Bay Area, San Francisco, and he is a J-pop artist here in Japan.
One of the biggest historical events for Black History Month.
Going through just to remind folks that cultures and people, all cultures, all people matter, and it's a global celebration. So you might have caught my video that I posted, which was a science experiment, and it had to do with ethylene gas being used to ripen some avocados. So it turned out just fine. What I did was, this was part of the of what I did in my book titled STEAM, Shorts and Anthology. And the important part of that is science matters. I remember my mother would always complain to me that the vegetables in the store don't taste right. And I didn't quite get it. She grew up on a farm, and she's right. After going through this experiment, I had some very, very hard avocados, and I discovered that if you place them in a bag with the apples and bananas and let them sit for 3 days, they ripen. And I'll play this again quickly because science, STEAM, and climate matters. And what I want to do also is show you the videos on YouTube. We'll play this quickly just as a refresher because this is not only just about science, it's about culture, history, and there's some very interesting scientific achievements that are, as far as patents and innovation in the Black community and other people of color that have not been recognized. For example, Charles Drew, do you know what he's famous for? I'm going to name a few names. Can you name who invented the traffic light? So these are things to remember, very important things to remember. And I won't repeat these things, but as part of our history celebration, it's something to think about. So let's get this quickly going and see if we can refresh the memory, because what I'm doing, if you feel inclined, you can donate. I'm looking for corporate sponsors, and I used some real on how to demonstrate the value and the benefit of a sponsorship. It's for education. It's for moving our community and our education paths forward. And eventually, hi, this is Phyllis with the Science Experiment. My problem is I have 4 very hard process. So let's pull avocados that were delivered. We're having quite a few different. I did a search to find out how to ripen these avocados. The name of second one, and the instructions are put the avocados in a paper bag. I have an Amazon Prime bag, and by the way, I'm accepting sponsorships. So I believe this is how a sponsorship can work. I'd be glad to include my sponsors in my YouTube series and other international education. So I put my very hard avocados. So let's get the science experiment, because what I'm trying to do Amazon is show Prime how we can be relevant and have an apple, I'll be glad to accept a sponsorship by Apple Corporation as well. And then seal the bag. These fruits produce ethylene, according to my research, a plant hormone that aids ripening. The closed brown paper bag traps the gas inside to speed up the ripening time. I will add these ingredients. We'll wait, and I'll tell you about the results later with some creamy guacamole. Thank you, Amazon. Okay, so these are just some ideas. I'm working with another team of consultants that have been in the business of sponsorships and partnerships for years. So that's an idea, a hint to reach out to the avocado growers. I hear that there are some changes that are in the supply chains. I heard the other day they might cut off the imports of avocados, but I think they worked that out. And as an international trade specialist, when I worked in Washington, D.C., the agricultural sector was one of the big areas that we worked on to protect their interests in terms of international trade. Automotive, textiles, shoes, as well as semiconductors. So we had another great presentation by an anesthesiologist. Again, climate change, science matters. And he made a very insightful comment about the effect on the climate and the environment of the chemicals used in anesthesiology. So I want to give you a quick touchstone on this. This is the National Medical Association. I want to pause and add my comments because if one is not aware of it, we had Jim Crow throughout this country. I was born when Jim Crow was in effect by law. And so oftentimes there were no physicians. My sister and my brother were born at my grandmother's house by a midwife because there weren't any doctors available. Hospitals were segregated. And again, these physicians had to go through so many barriers One was even joining their medical association. So one was created. It exists today, National Medical Association. So again, I want to honor this organization because I attended their conference in 2021. I've done my PhD research since 2012 by talking to first-hand subject matter experts. These are the examples, and I want to continue because without NMA answering my questions, they had experts who could answer questions that were nagging me for many years, since my son was born. So let's continue, but we won't belabor this point. Again, thank you, NMA. I don't know. This is Dr. McAdoo.
Absolutely are learning. And so I've been at Emory since 2008.
Thank you so much for sharing, Dr. McAdoo.
Hey, so I am currently, like I said, practicing on active duty in the Navy. Stephen, I went to medical school at the Howard University, Washington, D.C., one of the best decisions of my life. After Howard, I went to the University of Chicago Medical Center for the 4-year categorical anesthesiology residency program. I kind of lucked into anesthesia as well because I had a classmate who was super excited about it. And the national conference was in D.C. When I was a third-year medical student.
Okay, I'm going to scroll
I absolutely
forward. Hopefully
loved
they'll touch
my
on
time
some
in
of the
residency. I
environmental
loved
issues
residency.
because it
I
was a shock
loved
to
the
me, just the
ICU
fact
rotation
that
mostly.
these experts
And
took the time
eventually,
to note
once I'm
that
done with my
not
military service
only are
commitment,
you
which is done
losing
next
your
July, I'm going to
consciousness,
be returning
going
to
through
University of Chicago to
different
complete a
levels
critical
of
care fellowship.
reality, but the chemicals and the
After
gases that are being
finishing
used
residency
affect
2018,
not only you, the
I
patient,
moved to
but it's an
Portsmouth,
environmental
Virginia,
issue, and I'm not
kind of
sure
Seven
if they're going
Cities,
to cover
Northern
it
Virginia
here,
Beach
but
area,
it was
to start my practice on active
eye-opening.
duty in the Navy as academic practice, along with some other extra stuff kind of mixed in with the as part of the military. And I do get to teach and work with residents, and really been working on building my niche in medical ethics as well.
Thank you for sharing, Dr. Bradley.
I see that the
Hi everyone, again, my name is Liddy. I actually grew up in Inglewood, California, but born in Nicaragua, Central America. I went to undergrad at UC San Diego. I ended up taking actually 4 years off between high school and undergrad. So I had this amazing opportunity to work in DC. I got to work on the Shell. I got to be an intern at the White House and then do a fellowship at the CDC. And that was all in line with my plan of becoming a family medicine physician. I was hoping to go into public health. And it, again, similar to everyone, I kind of felt like I fell into it also. My sister actually went to medical school too. She was a year older, and she told me during her rotation that she really enjoyed anesthesia, but she had already chosen internal medicine. She would tell me, oh, you should check it out. I think they would definitely take a personality style. Those kind of like that too. Very different from family medicine, obviously, but I decided to give it a chance. I ended up looking for mentors. I had to make people vouch for me. And
okay, well, cut. Again, I'm honoring the culture, our accomplishments, our contributions to reach this stage in our society of all people, and oftentimes it's not acknowledged that without, again, the doctors paying attention, doing well, the experts, we wouldn't be alive. In my book, short anthology on page 30, I mentioned that only 22% of American workers are women. of the total and why. Some of us may not know the answers. But again, the data is included in this book of stories that I've read on Amazon. So let's keep moving forward. As I said, we want to move forward. We want to make sure we cover the high points because it's not just about reading, it's about moving forward and adding to the conversation. So, another quick break if you want to stand up, move along with this. Feel free to because I had to take a stretch. Clock. Hopefully, another few more minutes. And you ask yourself, parallel universe. Don't want to repeat our mistakes. We want to learn. Movement, blood circulating. Taking 42 minutes. I'll take another 5 minutes or so. Then we'll wrap things up. And we want to leave you with a lot of things. Make sure you exercise, keep the blood moving. And I'm trying to stay out of the way of the doctors. Keep moving and thinking, flowing. There's a great movie. We'll use that in the next series called A Time to Heal. The things that we went through during Jim Crow. All right, we'll cut, but quickly I want to share that I learned. As a child, grew up in California and wasn't really aware of things, and I'm still being woke up, especially when I learned that blood was segregated in Jim Crow. Now, people who know, they'd say, of course, everything else was segregated, but when I saw a video by Hawaiian congressional representative, World War II veteran, he said he was shot, nearly bled to death, and the only way he was saved in the transfusion was when he was given black blood. Now, we'll leave it at that, but we've made some changes, and I think that's one of the changes to be thankful for. But blood, plasma, transfusions can be life-saving, but again, during Jim Crow, I understand it was segregated, and there was white and black blood, period. Okay, let's keep moving. We have the train. The whole point of this, I call it the grown folks woke reading and literacy presentation, is to help our audience think. Ask your students, your teachers, your readers, what do you think is important in your neighborhood? What I think is important here, you might not think is important there. So I'm back on screen, and I want to go through this. Think about your demographics. My audience consists of adults, mostly here locally, but also globally as a Foreign Service officer. And I have clients around the world, including India, Europe, and I'm expanding more. So my book I mentioned is called Shorts, a STEAM anthology. I just want to show you the cover. I read a few pages from that. That's part of this book series you read. I read from my book. So think about what books, how do they reflect your local viewpoints now? Uncle Tom's Cabin, in my opinion, it doesn't reflect too much of what I want is as far as positive learning. So think about it. Think about what other cultures we have now compared to when the libraries were built. Many are over 100 years ago. Do a diversity audit of your local collections. How many books do you have or are aware of that have African American or whatever your ethnic background is? Think about it. So local budget matters here in the city include the fact that we have a budget deficit. Now, the money is from taxpayers. It goes for transportation. It goes from the convention center. It goes towards government payroll. But I discovered we have a deficit projected over the next 5 years. But I've located a summary of local salaries, and I don't see any adjustment in the salaries despite COVID. The salary of the city manager listed here, he's no longer employed, $300,671 base salary. An additional benefit of $42,000, a total base salary of $352,000. Yet the city says we have a deficit. The total salary with additional benefits, $124,000, brings the salary of the city manager to $477,445. So those of you that don't know, I have an MBA with a double major in international business and finance. I did city audits. I'm taking a water break. My local city, as well as 89 others, were part of a contract. So it's one of my local matters that Second Wind looks into. The city manager who $182,000 with additional benefits, bumps it up to $323,000. Additional benefits of $420,000 for the city battalion chief. The other one I'll quote is the city attorney's salary also is listed. So it might be worthwhile as taxpayers and as we see the expenditure of funds during COVID-19 as we work at home, what changes have been made in salaries. We know we've been locked up in our homes, benefits are cut. But again, that's a talking point. Those are local concerns. And as I mentioned, to do the process of woke reading, find relevant readings for you and my customers who are around the world. Think about water, the availability of water, as well as the environment and personal climate matters. I mentioned the anesthesiologist, that if you go in the hospital and you are treated by an anesthesiologist, you look for competency, but you can also think about the overall impact on the environment. So there's so-called green anesthesiology that I learned about thanks to the NMA. Another sip of water, because again, just to remind folks, listeners, these were the physicians that they mentioned at the beginning. They encourage and they're looking for more people of color to become physicians. I have friends that actually went to Cuba for medical school because they offer free medical training. They could not be admitted here in the United States. So NMA emphasized that they help people who are admitted to medical school. Their grades may not be the A, triple A, quadruple A plus plus, but he said with a little bit of mentorship, they become excellent physicians. And I've seen that firsthand by attending the conference and be asking a question that's bugged me for over many, many years. So again, in honor of my doctoral studies, I added some scholarly citations, and I'll include this. We have a woke reading listing of relevant sources. So the first one I found is Offield, publisher's name, the author's name. The title, School Librarians to Admire Cicely Lewis Models Responsive Librarianship, 2021, current, published in the Journal of Librarian Administration. The second scholarly reference, and that was a requirement for my doctoral studies, and that's important because it shows the value of the content, but also it's reviewed and approved by scholars. The second one is Exploring How School Counselors May Use Bibliophilia, Black Boy. and it's not deep, nor is it's based on solid data and research. I really research the next article. Both authors explore theories on building like 60 conversation. And the rest is one. I think it's relevant to have an article about it. That's one. Enlisted. Bill and Morgan author perspective on reading practices. Published in ESQ, a journal of 19th century American literature. We want to make sure as it ebbs and flows, but it never goes away. So you can look at this and imagine possibly our oceans. You can look at this and imagine perhaps oil and other resources that are limited, but it keeps on flowing. So our Devil's Gate Reservoir is the environmental issue here in the Pasadena area. It's also that was an area as a child I hiked in. There's if you look at my cursor on this left part of the screen, there was a park where we did camping. I understand it was abandoned, but there's a 20-year effort, over 20-year effort to deal with the pollution, the trash, the pileups that the Public Works, LA County Public Works, is dealing with. So now we've raised the local issues. Let's play a quick game of Read Woke, and then we'll be done for now. Thank you for your patience. Let's pull up another card. Get your card on the website, and I'm going to read from this. Ready, set, go. So, Being Jazz. If you get that, mark it off. The next one. Monday's Not Coming. And these Read Woke titles on the Read Woke, these are suggested titles that reflect a little bit more diversity. So I'm giving this to you to do some research. Find out what these are about. The next one, Girl Man's Up. Mark it with an X in case you need instruction on how to play. Just look at my YouTube video, which covers the world and billions and billions of viewers. The next one, let's mark that off with an X. I like this one. I Am Malala. I mentioned it on the sample video because Malala, girls should be educated, survive well, and she has honors from a major English university, either Oxford or Cambridge, and she's still going. I just love that story. But let's finish this. We're at 156. Hidden Figures. Let's mark that because became a very well-known movie about African American women in the space race, which reminds me of my work at Jefferson. Red Nation, let's mark that. Children of Blood and Bone, let's mark that. And last but not least, Dear Martin, let's mark that. So if you get your X's all the way across, you're a winner. But if you really want to play bingo, you keep calling these out until the whole card is full. Let's do one more. The 57 bus. Let's mark that. Our culture, our history, and what matters. The Tougaloo Nine, they were arrested in Mississippi. I believe Tougaloo, Mississippi, when a group of students went into the white segregated library under Jim Crow and were sitting there reading, and they were arrested and told to leave the library. They were escorted out by the police, and they said, go down the street to the colored library. So again, thank you for joining the chat. This is recording. You'll receive a copy. I'll post it on my website. I want to show that to you briefly. Feel free to send me an email if you have questions. I want to show you the website. You can send me an email or go to the website itself, and it's phyllis'ssecondwind.com. Cut. Nope.
Literary support that has been provided by the United States, such as data at this point.
Nope, not happening.
This land is expensive.
Tax worries.
Hi, this is Phyllis with just the latest update. I'm trying and working on my technology issues, but there's two things I want to share with my listeners. I've been updating the Woke series and getting ready for the session number 3 coming up in a couple of weeks, and I came across a very good video presentation that questions whether or not we'll have another History Month celebration. So in order to use this information best, I would refer you to the YouTube, and if I can pull it up quickly, I'll find the quick video advertising. But in the meantime, what I would add to this is another thing I did this week, which was with George Washington University. They have an innovators competition, and I was a judge, and we had 2 very excellent teams vying to move forward on the next round of the competition that involves cash and boost for their idea. And I came across some ideas and information that I'd heard about, which involved a settlement of a major lawsuit by Johnson & Johnson that I think it's worth noting, because I think this is just the first of many to look for. So if I can pull that up quickly, I'll go through it. And the latest was February 25th. So I knew I'd heard something about it. And basically they're saying Johnson & Johnson reached a settlement confirming that there was a sufficient level of participation to move forward. And it's not only Johnson & Johnson, but others regarding the current crisis, including OxyContin. Now, the total settlement actually is $26 billion. So it's something worth watching, is something worth paying attention to. And what I'll do, as I said, I'm using different types of technology just to give us some other things to think about, in addition to the current things going on in the Ukraine and in regards to Russia. So it's very difficult to avoid it. But as another thought, that's not the only thing going on. So what I want to do is share this briefly about the settlement. $26 billion to settle the claims that fueled the opioid crisis. So take a listen. It's only a few minutes. And when you are sort of eligible to get married, what do? You go to... That's not it. This is just the brief one right here.
Hey, NPR. The Indicator is a little show about big ideas from the people who make Planet Money. For a quick hit of insight into work, the economy, and everything else, click the play button below to listen to a recent episode. Support for NPR comes from USA Facts, analyzing government data so everyone can see our nation in numbers. More at usafacts.org.
One of the nation's biggest healthcare companies will pay roughly $26 billion to settle claims that helped fuel the deadly opioid crisis. The settlement was announced early this morning. Payments from the firms, including Johnson & Johnson and McKesson, will go to help fund drug treatment programs for the next couple of decades. NPR addiction correspondent Brian Mann has been following this. Brian, what are these companies accused of doing wrong that they're paying that much money?
Yeah, Johnson & Johnson made generic opioid medications. The other 3 firms aren't big name brand companies, but they're huge wholesalers. AmerisourceBergen, Cardinal Health, and McKesson. They shipped these pain pills to pharmacies all over the country, and governments accused them of making and distributing these highly addictive medications recklessly at a time when addiction rates and overdoses were surging. Here's North Carolina State Attorney General Josh Stein, who helped negotiate this deal.
These companies made billions of dollars while millions of Americans got hooked on opioids. This settlement goes a long way in holding them accountable for the role they have in creating and fueling the crisis.
Now, in statements today, the companies denied any wrongdoing. They strongly dispute these allegations that they fueled the opioid crisis. But with this settlement, they hope to put this all behind them. These opioid lawsuits have been just a huge public relations disaster for these firms.
And this comes at a time when drug overdoses are killing record numbers of people in the U.S., more than 100,000 deaths last year. Is this money expected to help?
Yeah, I asked Josh Stein about this, and he says yes. A lot of local governments around the country are so cash-strapped right now because of the pandemic. Their public health departments need help, and this will mean a steady stream of funding for drug rehab and treatment programs.
There will be people alive next year who otherwise would not have made it because of the programs and services that we are now going to be able to fund with these settlement proceeds.
But all the experts I talked to agree that this opioid crisis is so big and getting bigger that this money is a fraction of what's needed. Most of the costs of this epidemic is going to keep being paid for by taxpayers.
Yeah, $26 billion, though, still a lot of money, only about a tenth of the size of the tobacco settlements of the 90s. Do the people you're talking to, Brian, say this settlement maybe brings them a sense of justice?
It's hard to put a price tag on this opioid crisis. Prescription opioids alone have killed 250,000 Americans over the last 2 decades. Street opioids like heroin and fentanyl killing hundreds of thousands more. I talked with Joe Rice about this with the firm Motley Rice. He's one of the lead attorneys suing Big Pharma. And he says he thinks $26 billion is a fair amount for these companies to pay. And Rice said it's important that under these settlement agreements, most of the money is now locked in for drug treatment programs. It can't be diverted for other uses.
You give them some sustained payments over the next 10, 15, 18 years to start rebuilding their communities and deal with this epidemic that we're dealing with.
This landmark deal took years to negotiate. It went on the talks for many, many years. But now this money is going to start flowing out to communities pretty fast. The first dollars will go out in April.
NPR addiction correspondent Brian Mann talking about a $26 billion opioid settlement announced just this morning. Brian, thanks.
Thank you.
All right, so this is the latest. I judged 2 teams that are venturing with their innovative business idea, and they move forward to the final round. So there's sources of funding available to treat our social ills, and this helps me move forward in applying my doctoral goals, which is to advocate and empower for positive social change. So I'll end this for now, and thank you for listening. Take care, and be sure to check out my website for any updates. Hi, this is Phyllis. I have a latest update on my Second Wind series. I've been busy. I helped support the George Washington University Innovators Contest and supported 2 teams that actually moved into the finals. And the good news is they're tackling a major social issue. And I discovered in doing my research, there was a major settlement that I want to share with my listeners because it is important, it matters, and just listen in and enjoy. Listen and learn.